Body, who's a weekly guest with us, talking some college football recruiting. He's over at On 3 with the Bengal Tiger. They do great work over there. He, Shay, and the crew. Must follows on social media, and you can catch him here weekly with us on the show. Bill, good morning. How are you?
Doing well, guys. How are you?
Doing good. Looking fantastic this morning. Backdrop is blinging. Bill, LSU swings and misses on these defensive tackles. Brian Kelly has a soundbite yesterday that goes pretty viral about guys that they're not buying. What's the formula now here for LSU to get some depth in at this position of need?
Yeah, the formula is to go out and find quantity that can give you serviceable, decent snaps in the SEC. And that's the hard part, is now that there's even more pressure on them to find somebody that can play. There are options out there, but at the end of the day, there are, guys that are, kind of toss-ups. You can bring up a guy from a lower level who's done really well, and you can see something on tape and you can see the athleticism and maybe it's there, but he doesn't pan out. Or there's guys that are maybe less thought of or slept on because they haven't done enough at the Power 5 level that are maybe available, that you've got to dive down deep into and find out, well, is there something wrong with his position coach at his current school? Did he go through injuries? There's just all sorts of things that they have to go through to find players that don't, pop up into the portal and hit you in the face as somebody you should pursue right away. That said, they do have options out there, like an Aiden Huntington at Louisiana Monroe, who they can go after and try to pursue. They just offered Grand Valley State defensive tackle, JVR Suggs. So they've got a couple guys that they like enough to offer. And again, it's just about finding quantity now, because you do have, limited options when it comes to picking up one kind of blue chip transfer defensive tackle. And I mean, unfortunately, that's the position they're in, but sometimes quantity isn't a bad thing at defensive tackle. I would say that at least, because when you can rotate players and they can give you 100% and know that somebody's going to come off the bench and give them a rest, I mean, that's a big deal in the SEC. I mean, these guys get worn down. It's hot in a lot of the games. These offenses are going fast. You need guys that you can rotate. And I felt like even as LSU was going down the road with a Dominic Williams or a Simeon Barrow, they still needed to find one more defensive tackle to come in and just give you some depth and give you some push off the bench. So that's the goal right now, is finding multiple guys for LSU.
I mean, Bill, is it my ignorance in this of just thinking that, like, at this point, LSU, I mean, I'm not saying that they should have the pick of the litter, but, I mean, they're selling playing time, right? I mean, I'm sure that there's NIL packages behind these recruiting pitches that make sense, but I mean, above all else, the pitch of all pitches is playing time, and LSU seems like they have it.
Yeah, they sure do. This is as dire of a situation as I've seen. I'm thinking back, I can't really recall something like this for LSU. I know they were hit with scholarship numbers that first spring Brian Kelly was here, but this is a totally different situation on the defensive tackle front that they've not as much faced even in my time covering the program. They have to find somebody who can help Jacoby and Guillory. Look, they have Gio Paez, who they brought in. They brought in Sean Washington. They have Dominic McKinley coming in. They have Demirian Johnson, who was on campus this spring. Preston Hickey's a walk-on. A lot of people talk about. They just have to find somebody, and the great thing is they do have that pitch. And yes, defensive tackle is a premium position. Corner, offensive tackle, those are probably the two other positions, and outside of a quarterback, that I look at and say that's where teams are going to overpay. That's where teams are going to just try to load up with as much talent as they possibly can, especially in the SEC. And so, yes, they have the pick of the litter. Yes, there are other SEC teams after Aiden Huntington as well, for example. So they are going to have to watch that and try to get them on campus and make their push, and know that you've got NIL available to make this work. but you also have playing time, and you have a plan. You have a guy that's developed multiple defensive tackles into being first round or NFL draft picks, and then you have LSU just sent 3 to the NFL draft. So all the opportunities there, all the selling points are there. They just have to find one that is excited about coming here. And I mean, if you're Aiden Huntington, I mean, you played in state, you get how much it matters to LSU fans in Louisiana. And you can kind of be the savior if you're looking at it from maybe his perspective.
Billy, you've seen and heard these recruiting pitches up close. You know what they sound like. How different is the pitch for a portal player compared to a guy coming out of high school, and what's the difference there?
Yeah, nowadays portal visits are often a little shorter. I mean, even Dominic Williams, when he came in for multiple days, I was kind of like, wow, okay, that's a long portal visit, because now guys fly in late because maybe they're coming from somewhere else, and then you get them on campus for the day, and that night they fly them out. A lot of these portal visits aren't these long official visits where you get them in on Friday morning and you get to have lunch or dinner with them, and then you get all day Saturday, and then you try to send them home Sunday mid-afternoon or something like that. So these portal visits are very different in that sense. And the challenge for coaching staffs when you don't know where a player's head's at in particular, because they've just gone into the portal, you don't have multiple years to build a relationship. And even when you do have a pre-existing one from maybe his original high school recruitment, you don't know where he's at, for the most part, until you talk to him once he's in the portal. And then you have to turn around and get a visit scheduled. And these visits, you've got to walk the line between having fun, showing them that they're a priority, showing them, what life could be like in Baton Rouge or wherever city you're recruiting that player to. You also have to show them you're about business and show them the plan. And I mean, I've heard just from different transfers that, X school, we were all business. I was there for a day. We went through position meetings for 5 hours. I was into it. I knew that was the place for me. Others are, wow, we just kind of hung out. It was family. It was this, that. We talked a little ball. I knew what they needed from me, and that sealed the deal. So it's pretty interesting to hear these transfers go through it. I mean, the whole photo shoot thing is just not usually as big as it has been in the past on official visits. In high school, these transfers don't usually go through that as much. It's more about business from what I've heard about. And I mean, I look back and remember before the portal when Joe Burrow came on his visit. I mean, that's what he was all about. He was all about business. He was coming here for 2 years and out to the NFL. It was a big, long job interview, and that's how most transfer guys are looking at it, because they've seen the glitz and the glamour of the top 10 lists and the official visits and the coaches lying to them at times about where they're at on their board. They've seen the high school recruitment process play out, and it's very different from the transfer process once they realize maybe, okay, I'm in the portal for a reason. Why am I going in? Well, I wanted X, Y, and Z at my last school, and whatever those reasons are, they're looking for somewhere different, and a lot of them are less tilted towards, fun official visit, but rather, business, and whether that involves NIL or not is kind of up to the player.
Yeah, talking to some people around LSU, like they were disappointed that a player had left without giving them a commitment, and it was just kind of my train of thought of, it was probably going to be rare in a transfer portal recruitment to get a commitment on campus when there's still scheduled visits, right? Like Simeon Barrow still had Missouri and Miami he was going to, but LSU was really pushing for him to commit before he left. I mean, it seems like these things are if nothing else, going to come down to being a bidding war, right? I mean, like they want to go hear every pitch. Yeah,
they certainly can be, and certain positions are probably played out a little differently, right? Like, and for LSU, you get the last visit with Dominic Williams, and you pitched him last, but you also know they knew pretty quickly that the number had changed. I don't know if Dominic Williams makes a visit or if LSU brings him in if they know the asking price was going to reach seven figures. And I don't think he ended up getting that, but that was where this kind of the supply and demand, was at that point for a guy like him. And eventually, LSU said, no, we're not going there. And Texas said, no, we're not going there. And OU, from what I understand, went a little south and they got him. But OU had the first visit. Then you flip it around and LSU had the first visit, maybe second, on Simeon Barrow. And they felt like that visit went real, real well from what I had heard. But he was going to still go through his process and let things play out. And maybe if Dominic Williams wasn't kind of such a saga, or maybe if he wasn't even on campus, maybe, the LSU could have said, hey, wait, let's talk a little bit more, Simeon Barrow, before you make your call. Or I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ifs and all of that, but I'm of the opinion that the whole last visit or the first visit is just not as much a big deal anymore, especially with transfers. And I think we're seeing this with some of these high school kids as well. We're starting to see them trend away from that last visit just meaning the absolute most and kind of closing the deal. It's either a silent celebration already and they already know where they're going, or it's just kind of happens that way that schools get the last visit and maybe they end up getting him, maybe they end up not. But yeah, I mean, it was, I think the way the Dominic Williams recruitment played out, was disappointing for LSU. I think they were a little bit more hopeful that he was about the opportunity to come in and play a lot. And look, all three schools need defensive tackles. Yeah. I mean, they really did. So, you can't fault too much in terms of playing time going elsewhere in those specific cases. But, LSU has the dire need. I think we all know it. And so they, for it not to work out with one or both of them was disappointing. But you got to handle a lot of this in the fall portal window, and I think a bunch of things are right in this. And Brian Kelly needed to make a change on his defensive staff. He felt he went about it the right way when it comes to making the change with the defensive staff and doing it after the bowl game. But there was also the sense that probably Brian Kelly feels now, I should have pushed harder on the staff I did have to go out and find a true defensive tackle. They did get Sean Washington out of junior college. They did have a lot on their plate with closing out guys like Gabe Relaford and Dominic McKinley, who are critical lands. But the fall portal window, there's so much more out there. The price, so to speak, is less because there is more supply out there. And quite honestly, I mean, the way to do defensive tackles is I think you got to be able to bring in 2 to 3. Mm-hmm. And if you bring in 2 to 3 that are kind of solid rather than a blue chip splash, you're probably in better shape than some of the teams that, yes, you can find a difference making defensive tackle. And there are, I mean, a handful of them in college football in general, let alone in the portal. So you're kind of pigeonholing yourself down into this small group. But LSU needed to add 2 to 3 guys who can actually play and just give you solid snaps, and then that room looks totally different. And in the fall window, for the price of kind of what Dominic Williams was that LSU was in the market for, they could have gotten 2 to 3.
I agree.
And Billy, you mentioned trying to close these things out in the fall portal window. As we've seen this thing play out with Dominic Williams in the second window, where it feels like it's all pretty much he waited out to a point where he knew he'd be able to get above market value. Do you think that's a precedent that's going to be set going forward with next year when guys that are at either a position of need or an extremely skilled guy that wants to hit the portal or somebody that just wants to get a bag go, I'll wait for the second window and watch all the highest bidders roll in, then I'll pick a team?
I think there's always going to be a select couple of players in that instance. I really don't think many guys want to sacrifice the development in the spring, the playbook in the spring, and all of those things to risk how their fall is actually going to go out. And there's usually, for those elite guys, enough money in the fall, without a doubt, to make somebody happy, or at least there should be. But there will be a select few in the spring that play this game and wait it out. And quite honestly, I mean, with Dominic Williams, the thing is this has been a saga for TCU for well over a year. I mean, there's been rumors that he was going to enter after the 2022 season. There was rumors that he was going to enter after the spring. Rumors he was going to enter after 2023. And so, when you have other collectives from some of these big-time schools letting your camp know, hey, we're right here. We've been right here this has been going on that long. And you finally pull the trigger because, and this isn't even a slight to TCU, but there's no way that they were going to get to where any of these teams, even the jumping off price. So it was time for him to transfer, and he took advantage of it without a doubt. But I think overall you're going to see it be a select few rather than this massive shift to the spring transfer idea that, okay, the supply is a little bit more limited. Let me go. I'll be a little bit more coveted and things like that. I think it's more so going to be a select few.
Billy Embody joining us here on 3. All right, so Bill, LSU mentioned that they are also looking for cornerbacks. Corey Raymond was meeting with a 2025 prospect earlier this week when he was meeting with Jason Stokes, who is out of Weiss High School in Texas. He's a guy that's kind of flown under the radar here. Where does LSU stand on this recruitment?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because Pflugerville Weiss is one of the top talent producers in Texas right now. I mean, they really have a talented group of prospects coming through there, and Jason Stokes has kind of been under the radar. And quite honestly, Pflugerville Weiss, I believe, has 2 or 3 blue chip wide receivers, guys that are in the top 150 of their positions over the last couple years between cycles. And so maybe college coaches were going out there and watching, not him get cooked. I have no idea, but you maybe lose some battles and one-on-ones to some of these elite guys, and maybe guys say, okay, all right, we're going to take a pause here, and then your offer list reflects places like Liberty, Texas Tech, Utah, some good programs in there in terms of evaluations. And then Corey Raymond gets wind of them and goes out there and throws an offer on the table and sees this sleeper that should have a bigger recruitment. So LSU's just jumping into this one. He's a really talented prospect from what it looks like, and he's well coached. That program is on the rise, and Corey Raymond really liked what he saw, and they're doing a good job of mining Texas's cycle at the cornerback position. I think they're going to come away with probably 1 or 2 Texas defensive backs for Corey Raymond's room if they can.
Staying in the defensive back rooms real quick, Billy, news has come through that Deshaun Jones, the Wake Forest transfer portal cornerback that LSU obviously had eyes on, as well as committed to Alabama after his visit there. LSU swings and misses again, I guess, in the portal. Are they looking to add another DB, or was that kind of just the one that they had eyes on?
I think they're going to look at adding another cornerback. I think they're going to look at adding, best available. I think that's the right approach as well when you do have a couple of scholarships to play with. That's how you make your team better. I mean, is saying, okay, we don't maybe have a hole here, but we could make our roster better if we can get certain players at certain positions. And that's what they're open to, I think, with this spring portal window, on top of obviously needing to get defensive tackles. Don't get me wrong. But Deshaun Jones was a good one that was out there. I think they're going to let the market kind of see what guys kind of they can get in on now, and maybe transition to more of a, okay, do we address the entire secondary? Do we look at a safety that's in the portal? They'll kind of reset now, I think, and I'm a little surprised Deshaun Jones didn't take more visits, but I will say this: there are more corners out there. There are some guys with some pedigree that are young. There are players that are a little bit more experienced that you could bring in and maybe make a move for. There's corners. It's one of the positions that was actually a nice surprise for coaches, is finding out all these kids who had gone into the portal as corner transfers. So there are corners out there. We'll see who they make a move on, if they make a move. Corey Raymond's whole thing is right now they've got to get the floor of talent back up to a higher level. They don't need to take somebody who okay, he can help us, maybe, but he's going to be here for 3 years. He was a redshirt freshman. It didn't work out elsewhere. And then if he can't play, then that's a scholarship spot he could use in this 2025 class. So they might be able to get by with what they have for this season on the roster. And so that's why they're being very particular. There were some corners that went to some highly touted schools or, some SEC schools that, they didn't like. And those schools took them totally their evaluation. But, Corey Raymond's being very particular because they've got to really make sure they hit on corners that they take and add into the room.
Billy Embody weekly here with us from 1-3. Make sure and follow him on social media. Great stuff as always, Bill. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, pal.
There he is, Billy Embody checking in. At Billy Embody is where you follow him on